Hello, everyone. This is Dorie Clark, and we're here with Newsweek's weekly interview show, Better. And we have a very special episode today because instead of having a remote guest who is tuning in, I have actual in-person, real-world guests for you. Today, we're talking about advice from top executive coaches, and I have Ann Sugar and Karen Walker, who are here live from Miami, Florida, joining us. So nice to have both of you here. And for all of you who are tuning in live, feel free to type into the chat box and let us know your questions. First of all, let us know where you're tuning in from. We want to hear who you are and where you're from, but we also want to hear your questions for these top executive coaches so that we can learn together and improve. So Karen Walker is a fantastic executive coach. She's the author of the book No Dumbing Down. She writes regularly for Forbes. She has her own live stream show. And Karen is an expert at hyper growth companies. She was an early employee at Hewlett Packard. And no, is that not true? No, it's Compaq, right?
Compaq, which was bought by Hewlett Packard.
That's
so,
right.
Yeah,
Close story. But she works with a lot of hyper growth companies, tech and otherwise. And Karen, I wanted to start by asking you. So we're going to be talking about tenets of leadership from the executives that you have worked with. And I'd love to hear a little bit more. One of the things that you've pointed out to me in the past is the role of curiosity when it comes to executive growth and executive leaders. Can you speak a little bit more about that and how that factors in?
Absolutely, Dorie. Thanks so much. And just thrilled to be here live with you and with my colleague, Ann. I was an early employee at Compaq Computer and went through hypergrowth with them for 14 years before they were sold to Hewlett Packard. But I've been working with technology primarily over the last 2 decades with CEOs and their senior teams on navigating hypergrowth. And it's been clear to me that the role of curiosity is vastly overlooked. That the very best executives, the most successful ones, are those who really care about learning, and they do that through asking questions. They are curious about all manner of things. When they run into things where they don't know the answer, or they believe they know the answer, but someone has a different perspective, they're really good about saying, "Tell me more. Tell me why you think about that." And I think at its core, this underlies a humility that the executives have, where they don't feel like they need to know everything. And they learn, they make better decisions based on what they've learned from their employees. I spoke recently with Brad Jacobs, who is a chairman of a company called XPO now. And he said when they buy a company, he's done like 500 acquisitions in his career, they go to the employees of the acquired company and say, "Tell me what you would do differently." So they don't go in and say, "Here's our playbook on how to do it better," although they've been super successful at that, doing things better. But they do it from the standpoint of being curious about what the people who know believe should be done differently. So it's this great curiosity that I think is really important.
That's great. Karen Walker, thank you very much. We're here with Newsweek's weekly interview show, Better. I'm Dorie Clark, and we're here with our special guest this week. We've got Karen Walker and Ann Sugar, who are joining us. I'm going to introduce Ann in a moment, but first I wanted to say hi to some of the amazing folks who are tuning in and joining us from around the world, and pardon my reach, because I'm a little further away today than usual, but we've got Maureen who's joining us. We've got Cheryl from Minneapolis. Karen's in Boston. We've got Rosinda coming back from Madrid. We've got Kimberly in New York. Hey there, Sushma is joining from India. Everybody's loving the in-person here. I know, right? You know, take that, COVID. Take that. Nancy's here from Boston. Ann is actually here from Boston, too. She's up in Andover. We've got Lucilla from Mexico City. Maria is in Oakland. Leni is here from Copenhagen. Agata is from Poland. Miriam is joining from Malawi. France is from Bogota. We've got Drorge from Zurich, and Sarah from Jacksonville. We love having every single one of you. Thank you for being here. And I want to take a moment to introduce my friend Ann Sugar. You may recall Ann because she's someone I actually wrote about in my book, The Long Game. Ann is a fantastic executive coach. She has worked for many years with Harvard Business School, where she coaches executives in their leadership programs, and she works with clients in tech companies, biotech. She does a lot of work in the sports field. You can regularly see her in Forbes and Harvard Business Review. And so, Anne, one of the things that I know is a point that you often make is about the role of creativity in executive leadership. You, in fact, I know you're walking the talk here. You actually took a poetry class not all that long ago to spark your own creativity. Talk to us a little bit more about that and how executives, especially who may be feeling a little bit burned out these days, can tap into their own perhaps overlooked powers of creativity.
Right. So thank you so much, Dorie, and it's great to be here with you all in person. So from a creativity perspective, I think where many executives that I work with kind of stumble a bit is we are so focused on our results, right? On our revenue. But part of that is we need to take a step back for a second and breathe. And for many leaders that I work with and I coach, it's very hard for them to kind of take a step back, right? And part of that is, and I think going off the ranch a little bit here, Dorie, is that leaders that I work with too also say, well, how do I teach my teams to be more creative? And I think coming from an advertising agency background, I think that anybody can be taught to be creative. I think that we are all creative in some aspect. And part of that is allowing the space for people to think and be creative, right? So just a couple of I'm all about the practical. So here are some very practical, I think, strategies for you to think about. And that is asking your team, slowing down and asking your teams the questions. So what do you think? Right? That question right there, I think, is really gives a lot of kind of open and expansive way for everybody to just to think. Right now, some people say, "Well, I can't even answer that. I don't know what I think." Right? So part of that too is there's lots of games and techniques. Right? One thing for you to think about is, what if I had a walking meeting with my team? Those sorts of practical things. What if I play the game? I'm going to go to the bookstore and we're going to look at all the different magazines there. And I'm going to pick a magazine that's not in my field. I'm going to pick a knitting magazine. And we're all going to think about how does that relate to the work or to the problem that we have. So it's really about that kind of way of adding openness and space and allowing people and giving people kind of, you also need a little bit of bumpers, right? And so that's what taking a walk is, doing some of those activities that will help from a creative perspective. And, I think lastly, and I'll turn it back over, is part of creativity is having fun. And how I think this comes up a lot is how can I make it more fun in my team? And it's not about having, a beer bash on Fridays, but it's about laughing and having a beer bash is not a bad thing either, for sure, but is adding a little bit more fun, which we can talk about later on if we wanted to.
Thank you, Anne. I know, who doesn't want to talk about fun? That's amazing. Welcome to everyone who's tuning in and joining us. Please type into the chat box. Let us know who you are, where you're dialing in from. We are excited to welcome you here. And if you're enjoying this conversation, hit the like button and hit the share button so that your friends can benefit from it as well and see it. And Karen, a great question came in. Oh, and I'm Dorie Clark. Hi. I'm here with Ann Sugar and Karen Walker, top executive coaches. And we're talking about advice from great leaders that they have learned and can distill for you. So a terrific question came in from our regular viewer, Alicia in Oakland. And she wants to know, let's put it up here, what are the prerequisite skills for curiosity and humility? If people don't actually have those attributes at all, how do you recommend building up to access them? Can these people be helped? That's what Alicia wants to know. Thank you so much for your great question. I'm going to hand that one over to Karen Walker.
Thank you for your question, Alicia. And just back to you for a moment, Ann Sugar. It's one stitch at a time is what knitting does for you. So, Alicia, it's a really good question, right? All of us are not born with humility. In fact, a lot of leaders, in particular senior leaders, are put in positions where they're expected to know everything. or in some cases where they've been brought up to be told that they need to know everything, right? That's this myth of the omniscient leader. And no one knows everything. No one's in a position to be able to make the best decisions all the time. So the first thing is just for the team around them to not expect it. And I think in a healthy, functioning, high-performance team, there will be conversations about who has what strengths, who has what development needs, and then your curiosity and humility can come from that. But if you're in a situation where you're working for someone who does think that they need to have the right answers all the time, and they're not curious, I'm not sure that you can get them out of that beyond being subtle. Around showing them different possibilities and different options, but there are people for whom it's not possible. But I try to self-select with my clients. I want clients who are curious. You might try to self-select into situations where you're working with people who are curious and who do have humility. Okay. Thanks, Dorie.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I'm Dorie Clark. We are here with Karen Walker and Ann Sugar, and we're learning advice from top executive coaches. We also want to say hi to our amazing friends tuning in from around the world. We've got Lars here from Sweden. Cicero is in Brazil. We've got a LinkedIn friend from Cairo. We've got Eli also in Brazil. We've got Sigit from Darmstadt, Germany. We've got Gladstone from Brazil. Brazil is doing really well. Oh, we've got Luciano from Belo Horizonte. Oh, this is amazing. We've got Xin Yi from China. Faisal is from Pakistan. Anna is in Woodland Hills, California. We've got Maureen from the Jersey Shore. Peter's back from Edinburgh. Francis is in Colombia. Our friend Adnan is in Turkey. And Chantel is from London, UK. And Rahil is from Birmingham, UK, not Alabama. We love having every single one of you. Thank you for being here. And we're here with Ann Sugar and Karen Walker. If you want to learn more about them, it's karenwalker.us and annsugar.com. We're learning advice from top executive coaches. And a great question came in for Ann Sugar from Chris. And Chris Taylor wants to know, what if all requests for feedback get zero response? You're asking, you're trying, you're doing the things that everybody says you should do, and your team, your colleagues, you're getting nothing. So what should you do in that situation? Ann Sugar, what's your perspective?
So that's a great question. That can come up a lot. I think sometimes you go into a meeting and you ask a question and you get complete blank stares, right? Or nobody wants to kind of have that topic or want to answer that topic. So I think there are two ways that you can look at this. And the first one is, how can I create more of an atmosphere in my organization that allows people to answer or to just put out any bad answer, right? Or any idea. So, how do you do that? And part of it is as leaders, people are going to model you. So are there times when you start it and you throw out the crazy answer, right? Or you throw out the crazy idea and you allow people to kind of, you create that landscape and atmosphere where people can say anything that they want, without retribution or any sort of idea from that perspective. Another way to really kind of start that creative idea thinking is allowing people to do it almost in an anonymous perspective. And that means again, I'm going to the real practical piece of this, is that bring into a meeting, the sticky notepads, and allow everybody to write their ideas down and put them up on a whiteboard, or bring in a guest, somebody to kind of get people going. But you want kind of that anonymity to get people to start to share their ideas. So that's really, two ways to get people to be a little bit more creative.
We're riffing off each other here. Here we go. Karen Walker, hot to trot. Here we go.
That's right. I didn't rip the microphone out of Ann's hand because we're friends. On feedback, I think for me there are a couple of things. One is always ask for it in private first. and always give it in private first, and see what you can get. And if you really don't get anything useful, I often work with groups where I have a team, and we have a very structured way of getting and receiving feedback, and everyone must participate. So in a facilitated way, often you need a facilitator to do this, to just go around the room and have everyone write down one thing that they want everyone else to start doing, to stop doing, to continue doing. So you're not just giving bad feedback, right? You're making feedback a thing that's about making the team better, and it's positive in terms of what you want to continue doing, and start doing is often positive, and the stop doing comes along with that. And if you do that, and then you ask everyone to give the feedback, then no one stands out. It's not like you're the only person giving feedback or the only person getting feedback. And that can be super useful for a team, both in terms of getting feedback, but making positive change in how they are functioning together. Thanks so much.
Wonderful. We want to welcome our amazing friends from around the world. This is Dorie Clark. It's our weekly Newsweek interview show, Better. If you're enjoying it, well, guess what? You can tune in every week. Just go to my website. It's dorieclark.com. You can sign up. You can download a free self-assessment, and you'll get reminders about things like this and join my email list as well. Today, we're talking about advice from top executive coaches. We've got Karen Walker and Ann Sugar who are joining us here. And we want to say hi to Hélène, who's joining us from Paris. We've got Victor in Cameroon. Cindy's tuning in from Savannah. Gwen's in Boston. We've got Cindy from Baltimore. Natalia is in Costa Rica. Ignacio's in Argentina. Anna is in San Diego. And we have Aswif Fanelli from South Africa. Welcome. Lauren is here in Miami. And we have Dea from Durham. So we're so glad to have all of you guys here. Thank you for joining us. And I wanted to ask another question to Ann Sugar. Ann, I know one of the things that you talk about quite a bit in your coaching is the importance of starting small and getting incrementally better at things. Can you talk about what you mean by that and why that's important?
Absolutely. And I think because when we think about it from a coaching perspective, or when we get data from a 360 and we get the feedback, where is it that we start? That's kind of the overwhelming piece to it. And again, my storyline is about the practical piece, right? So when we look at something that we need to change or something that we actually want to add, right, is what is one small step that I can take for that practicality. So it might be from I need to motivate my team. My team isn't, I need to motivate them a little bit better. Well, what does that look like? What would a motivated team look like? And create that story, right? So if I know what that is, then it might be, I am going to I'm going to sit down. I'm actually going to have my one-on-one meetings every week, right? And I'm not going to cancel them because it's really easy to cancel them. This is just one specific example. So I'm going to have my one-on-one meetings, and I'm going to ask, and I'm going to give some feedback about their careers, right? And the last 5 minutes, right? It's about the small detail. And it's not about, oh, I'm going to spend the entire hour talking about somebody's career pathing. But in a one-on-one meeting, I'm going to take the last 5 or 10 minutes in every meeting, and I'm going to use that to help motivate them from a career perspective. And all of that just adds up over time. And so that's just it's really about the small little steps that just add up.
Thank you very much. I'm Dorie Clark. This is Newsweek's weekly interview show, Better. And we have wonderful guests, Ann Sugar, Karen Walker. They are top executive coaches, and we are learning their wisdom. If you're enjoying the conversation, hit the like and share button and type your questions into the chat box. We want to take them and hear what's on your mind. And a great one, Karen Walker, came in from Rosinta. And she wants to know especially if you have a conservative culture and you're leading it, how can you actually move to becoming more curious and humble? This might not be easy for someone, but if they are personally committed to trying to do it, might feel a little weird, to admit that you don't have all the answers, especially if you kind of in some ways are a little nervous about your standing in that culture, it might feel like a sign of weakness to act curious and not give directions. But how can we tap more into that?
So, as a leader in a conservative culture, the best thing you can do is lead by example, as I think Anne mentioned earlier on a previous topic, and that is to show that you are open to not having all the answers. And that can be a little scary for people. I think it's important to name what you're doing. To say, you could even say, I've read, I've heard experts say that we will make better decisions if we are more curious and we get input from others. So you can cite an expert or something like that as an opening, so that then you can say, all right, so knowing that we can be better if we are more curious, how could we do that within our team, right? And so you don't have to have all the answers even about how to be more curious. You can have your team sort out what are the new behaviors we'd like to try in order to show that we are curious. And it's not a matter, by the way, of also, just asking and then listening. You want to do something with the information that you receive. If you hear something that is different from what you believe, you want to make sure that you sort of work through that to see if there's something there that can be put into action, put into use, so that people will keep giving you new information. Because if you ask for something and then you don't use it at all, people will not believe that you're serious about it, and they'll stop participating in your quest for curiosity. Thanks for the question.
I think there's a follow-up from Ann Sugar. Here we go. Thank you, Karen.
Thanks. So the one thing I want to add in terms of when you think about curiosity, right? And I'm going to relate this a little bit to creativity as well. It's about creating this baseline of quote unquote humanness, right? And that allows people to think more broadly, to think more creatively, to have the time to be more curious. And what that is, and I think a lot of us, we don't have the time. How do you take a step back and ask people? And I've worked in conservative cultures like this, but how do you make it more humanistic? And one way to do that is very simply is to ask somebody, well, so how was your weekend? Right. And it's adding this humanist piece to it that we're all in together. And Susan Cain, I interviewed her recently, and she writes about this in Bittersweet, that for people to be more creative is to really understand, or to be more curious is to really understand where people are coming from. And part of that is and it's not about being a therapist. It's not that. It's just making sure that you know how your team is doing, right? And asking that, because sometimes there are things that are underlying that we just don't know that are going on. And what she talks about is by doing that, it creates much more of a cohesive team.
Very nice. Thank you. I am Dorie Clark. We're here with Better, our weekly Newsweek interview show. Our guests are Karen Walker. You can find her at karenwalker.us, and Ann Sugar. You can find her at annsugar.com. And we're getting advice from top executive coaches. We also want to say hi to amazing friends from around the world. Federica's joining from London. We've got Kathy tuning in from St. Louis. Susan's in Arizona. And Robert is in Houston. Reem is in Georgia. We're so glad to have all of you guys here. Thanks for joining us. And a great question came in. We'll give this one to Karen Walker. Miriam wants to know, how do you demonstrate confidence without acting arrogant as a leader? This is a fine line. There's a fine balance we have to strike. Karen Walker, what do you think?
What a wonderful question, Miriam. Thank you so much for asking. As Dorie says, there is a very fine line between confidence and arrogance. I believe I would define arrogance as, I know the right answer. And I would define confidence as we have done, let's use the word we, have done the research, the conversation, the dialogue to know that we are on the right course. Confidence also leaves some space where you can change your mind if the data shows not to be what you thought it was, if the plan that you try doesn't go in the direction that you thought it might, then confidence allows you to reassess and adjust. Arrogance is we're going up this hill regardless of what's coming at us. And that is, as you say in your question here, not a good way to go. So I think it's all about being sure without being dead right. That would be the difference in confidence and arrogance. Thanks for your question.
So good. Thank you, Karen Walker. I'm Dorie Clark. We're here with Ann Sugar and Karen Walker, top executive coaches. And thank you all for tuning in. We have a great question. This one's for Ann Sugar. It came in and it's from Anil. And Anil wants to know, how do you create a sense of urgency in teams to finish tasks? A lot of teams, some of them are tired. Some of them are burned out. Some of them, frankly, never really had much of a sense of urgency. Let's be honest. So if you're the leader, if you really need to get something done, what the heck can you do to get your people motivated and to understand the importance of it? Ann Sugar, what do you think?
Oh, that's such a great question. Thanks so much, Anil. So I think there is even a step back, right? When you think about it's defining what is important, what are the goals, what are the KPIs of the team, so that people have a specific path and push, and they know where I need to be focused on, right? So it's about transparency and clarity in terms of these are the goals, these are the things that I should be working on, right? So that's really kind of like the baseline piece of it. Then there is, well, I want to think about my team for a second, right? How do I motivate my specific team in terms of a sense of urgency? Are there people, and when I worked in advertising, there were people that are fantastic, but they need a kind of a lot more prodding, whether I have the time to do it or not. And that's a whole nother story, is how do I flex getting the most out of my team, right? So it means that I have to treat people differently, right? In terms of in terms of motivating. It's not treating people differently. It's just, how do I motivate somebody? So meaning, let me give you for an example. If I have somebody and they're a very strong strategic leader, but they don't have that sense of urgency, even though they know exactly what they need to do, that might mean at the end of each day, they need to check in with you so that you really have this sense of urgency, so that they understand it. And it's not about babysitting, it's about motivating. And then I think, one other point that comes up a lot with leaders that I coach, and specifically, it was the CEO of an ad agency that I was coaching. She would say to me, I say that that the team needs to do X, and I come back and they still don't know it, right? Or they still don't have that sense of urgency. And I think it's about over communicating as well. People hear things in different modes, right? Do I need to be emailing them? Do I need to be talking to, do I need to have a conversation with them every day? And so I liken this from my advertising days. There are two other things that I want you to think about. And that is simplicity of message, right? When something is urgent, how can I distill it down to the simplest piece, right? The simplest thing that I want people to do, so that everybody is focused on that simple message in terms of urgency. And then the last thing is, if you look at advertising out there and you see that car commercial and it comes up, and you're watching TV and it comes up 4 times in that hour, it really all is about frequency. And frequency of messaging really also helps from an urgency perspective. And as I coached this CEO, we figured out that she needed to say the message a lot more. In fact, she needed to say it about 6+ times. And for her, it was kind of an alien thing, but she needed to say that message many more times than what she thought, for people to understand that something was urgent. Thanks, Anil.
Great. Thank you, Ann Sugar. That's great. We have time for probably just one more question, and a fantastic one came in from Susan. Susan is curious, and I'm going to give this one to Karen Walker. If you're a leader, you're working hard, you're trying to build a great team, but you are not being supported by your boss, what the heck can you do in that situation? It's so frustrating when you're not being backed up by the leaders above you, but you're really trying to do a good thing. Karen Walker, what should you do in that situation?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm sorry to hear that one might be in a situation where the leader doesn't support this, but I understand that that exists. I would say the most important thing might be to subvert the curiosity so that you are being curious, but maybe not in such a public way with your leader. It's perfectly okay in your one-on-ones to ask questions of people. It's probably okay in some team meetings to ask questions. And then also to think about what is it behind the leader's refusal to accept curiosity is a good thing. So it might be timeline, right? Asking questions and getting answers to those questions can take longer than just making a decision. And sometimes, by the way, when you make the decision is as important as what the decision is. Because if you make a decision too quickly and you don't have adequate information, you will not make a good decision. If you make a decision too late because you've taken time to gather a lot of information, then that might not be a good decision either. So I think it's important to maybe work with the leader on when does this decision need to be made, and then go about being curious in the time that you have, whatever that is, to make the better or best decision possible in the time that there is. So I don't know that I would be confrontive about it, but I try to figure out what the leader's objectives were and how to meet those in a time frame that would work for both of you. Thanks again for the good question.
All right, fantastic. This is Dorie Clark, and this is our weekly Newsweek interview show, Better. We have been here today with Karen Walker and Ann Sugar, top executive coaches, sharing their advice. You can learn more about both of them. You can go to karenwalker.us. You can go to annsugar.com. And of course, every week we are here, and you can go to dorieclark.com. That's my website. And you can sign up. You'll get reminders and notices as well as other communications. Until then, we'll be back next Thursday. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Ann. And thank you all for being here.
Take good care.